So the ordinary person who uses a motorbike or a three-wheeler is going to be directly affected by this move. So you are aware about this as well, Professor?
Yeah, of course I know. Yeah, that's what, because for that, what I believe that more than that, we have to increase their income, the sources of income.
So are we doing that? Are we doing that, Professor?
Yeah, that is what we have to say. The economic growth should be participatory growth, or it goes to the grassroots level. If we can increase, for example, livelihoods and all living activities in the rural area, then I don't think that. I don't think the cutting expenditure is a bad. But the important thing, increasing income should go.
So you mean to say, Professor, that the Sri Lankan government is not acting based on the whims and fancies of the International Monetary Fund?
No, one in political angle, one can suspect that. But this taxation was a needy one for the country.
Okay, Professor. Let's talk about how the devaluation of the rupee came into place. So this was also an agreement reached by the government to bring forth, to remove the cap that they put on the dollar rate as well. So this was a regulation by the IMF. Let's take a look at the electricity prices. They wanted state enterprises, state energy enterprises to make a profit, to break even the profit. So all these are regulations put forward by the IMF, and the government indeed is following these steps. And you were telling me, Professor, that the government is not acting based on the whims and fancies of the IMF. I want to know the logic behind this.
I did not say that government is not following. Someone can have, someone can understand and say.
So you mean to say the government is indeed following the regulations?
The government can follow. I'm not.
Are they following right now?
They can follow, because the problem here, in economic point of view, when there is a gap, how you are going to fill the gap? That's the issue. So as I told you, in political science, politically, you can argue whether government is following now or that. Since 1977, all governments came into power in Sri Lanka has been using the IMF loans, and IMF has been pushing its policy package for Sri Lanka. But time to time, there were periods where the governments were opposing even the IMF suggestions. But here, the most important thing what we have to see, there can be a link. But
there is a link. There can be a link, or there is a link.
There can be a link, but I'm not saying there's a direct link, because the important thing, how do you finance the trade gap? How to finance the trade gap? The only thing, you have to reduce the imports expenditure. You have to increase the export income. Export income is not rising very quickly, but import expenditure is rising quickly. So how do you fill this gap? Short term, anyway, you have to control the imports. So imports mean, I don't mean that all the imports, but what do you believe, that you can't control the oil importation? You can't limit the oil importation, right? So like that, there can be a link. But the important thing here, how do you address the trade gap in short run?
We're now going for another short commercial break. When we come back, we'll talk about the devaluation of the rupee, the fluctuating dollar, and how it's going to impact the economic growth of this country in the future. All this and more after this break. Welcome back to biz0804 in Focus. Our guest this evening is Professor H.D. Karuratna from the Colombo University. Professor, I want to know, do you think that the devaluation of the rupee on November 21st came at the right time?
Yes, because there was a demand from the people that there should be a devaluation in the
people. Who are the
particularly
people?
Exporters.
People you mentioned.
Particularly exporters. You see, exporters should get more income, because why? We all are aware, domestic production cost is rising. If they can't get more rupees per dollar, they can't keep the exporting. That is one sense. The second sense, that remittances coming to Sri Lanka. So those who are particularly grassroots level poor people who get the remittances from other countries, they get higher amount of rupees when the devaluation taking place. In a liberalized economy, you can't stop devaluation. Devaluation should gradually take place until the market forces coming right.
So at this particular moment, when we are talking, I want to know, there is no cap on the dollar rate at the moment. Is that what you're trying to say, Professor?
I don't think like that, but of course the rupee should be devaluated.
The decision came from the Treasury and not the central bank.
Sure.
It was a surprise to many individuals about the devaluation of the rupee. Why is it coming as a fiscal policy and not as a monetary policy?
Yeah.
What's the reason behind this? Has the rules really changed, Professor, as far as the central bank and the Treasury is concerned? What really happened?
I think even the fiscal policy, when government think about taxation and the private sector growth, that should link to the export growth as well.
Mm-hmm.
So in that sense, when the private organizations are asking to increase the devalue the rupee, the government can't neglect. That might be. But the ideal situation, it should be devaluated now. Is there any solution without devaluation? Because, as I told you, the export bill is not rising like the import bill. Import bill is rising more and more.
It's going to rise further, Professor,
Of
with
course.
the devaluation of the rupee. It's 132 or so.
But the effect is that, in that sense, the expensive imports will not buy. So as a result of...
Milk powder is an essential commodity in Sri Lanka. You are aware about that,
Sure.
Professor. Now, I spoke to many milk importers in Sri Lanka over the last few months or so about the rising cost of living and the dollar rate and so on and so forth. And they are telling me, Professor, that there has to be a revision in milk powder prices in Sri Lanka. So this is purely based on the rate of the dollar.
Sure.
What is the logic behind
what I
this,
see as an economist,
Professor?
what I see as an economist, this country, there's a big demand for milk, but it should be a fresh milk, because the milk powder industry in other country, if you go to country like Japan or Singapore, I don't think the people drink milk powder more than the fresh milk. So until our fresh milk industry is developing, this is a short run issue. So we have to take measures for developing the fresh milk industry in long run, rather than focusing on this short run issue. You see that if we keep dollar without devaluating because of the milk powder,
Not only
importers,
milk powder, talk
right?
about the oil as well.
That's not a long run economic
Even
development.
the oil,
objective
Professor.
thing. Oil, of course, that's what, when the price going up, the consumption should be
There are
just
predictions
quickly.
that the IOC, the Indian Oil Company, is also looking at revising its prices
Of course.
in the near future in light of the dollar rate as well. So I want to know, Professor,
Yeah.
what was the connection between this
the
whole...
purpose of devaluation is increasing prices of imports within the country and exports getting more income.
I agree with you
Right?
completely
So
on
with
that.
that
Mustn't
one-
the government really probably bring in a subsidy to give a relief to the people in light of such an event?
Sure, particularly for grassroots level, low income holders, government should give the subsidy. But you can't remain providing subsidy for all. Then no point of giving the taxes there, because getting taxes and giving subsidies doesn't work economic efficiency. We need the efficiency in long run. The market forces should work in long run, but short run, of course, there can be problems.
Professor, my final question to you is, what must Sri Lanka do in the current context to move forward?
Yeah, there are some basic, very important things we have to understand. First is, we have to gradually get rid from this, what we call oil-based technology. Diversification of energy is one of the main issues in Sri Lanka. The second, we have to give more priority for exports and searching markets. In that line, diaspora, Sri Lankans in abroad, we have to use for promoting exports, promoting tourism, all these way. That is one thing. And the most important thing, how to reduce the essential prices. We will be never able to reduce the prices. Prices are going up, but the important thing, how to increase the income for the people at grassroots level.
Before I let you go, Professor, I want to ask you one final question. My question is, recently a government minister said that a family can live with 7,500 and an individual can live with 2,500. In economic perspective, taking into account the current rate of inflation in the country, the current cost of living in the country, can an individual survive with 2,500 rupees? Or can a family really survive with 7,500 rupees? That's my final question to you, Professor.
Yeah, it's a very important question. We say that, for example, such kind of economy is a Robinson Crusoe economy, where you produce, you consume. Such a people, it is possible. So, for example, at rural level, if you are producing all, if you are eating...
Take a family in Colombo. Let's take a family.
Family in Colombo, that will never happen. So
in
Colombo, you can't live like that.
Thank you very much, Professor,
Right?
for joining us right here on
much.
Biz First in
Thank
Focus.